this video, we're going to talk about the Dance of the Dragons, and also Aegon II, the 6th Targaryen king of Westeros. If you haven't watched my Viserys the First video or my prequel to the Dance of the Dragons, I would watch those videos first, so that this video makes a little bit more sense and you can kind of get an idea where each character is coming from and what they're doing and what's going on. This is also probably going to be a two-part video because there is a lot to talk about for the Dance of the Dragons, and it is one of my favorite events that George R. has created in his world. So the Dance of the Dragons is a terrible Targaryen Civil War where rival branches of the House Targaryen fought during the years of 129 to 131 AC. It split the Seven Kingdoms into two, and the small folks, the knights, the lords, everybody took up a side. Either you were the Greens and you were for Queen Alicent and Aegon II, or you were the Blacks and you were for Rhaenyra, who was the firstborn child of Viserys and supposedly the rightful heir, and the rightful heir according to Viserys. This war would diminish the Targaryen power quite a bit, and their dynasty would survive. It would go on. We would see a lot more Targaryen kings after this, but they would never be as powerful as before this civil war because tons of dragons are going to die, tons of members. The realm is just going to be split apart. It's just going to be devastation, and it just was a really bloody, terrible war. So even though the war, the plots, and the scheming had started before Viserys died, it officially began when, on the third day of the third moon of 129 AC, bedridden King Viserys Targaryen ended up closing his eyes to take a nap, and he ended up dying without waking. When Viserys ruled, he had declared that Rhaenyra, which was his only surviving child of his first marriage, was going to be the Princess of Dragonstone, and then when he died, the Queen of Westeros. He had declared it, despite the council saying women can't rule. He said, nope, this is my daughter. This severely ticked off his second wife, Queen Alicent, who ended up giving him boy heirs, including Aegon, the eldest son, and her and Sir Otto Hightower both wanted her children to be on the throne. And there is some talk that maybe Queen Alicent added a little bit of poison to hasten his death so that she could put her boys on the throne. So King Viserys ends up dying, and a servant ends up finding him and goes to Queen Alicent and lets her know. And Queen Alicent had instructed all the guards and servants that when this day came, what exactly they were supposed to do, because this chick has been scheming for a really long time about getting her boys on the throne. She does not want her stepdaughter on the throne, even if her husband, the king, declared that, her stepdaughter should be. So Queen Alicent lets the manservant know, you are not raising the alarm. They end up taking him into custody, so nobody gets word that the king is dead. Queen Alicent ends up taking Sir Criston Cole to the bedchamber, and they confirm that Viserys is dead. And so Queen Alicent orders that the room is sealed, placed under guard. Nobody is supposed to know. She sends Sir Criston Cole to the White Sword Tower, summon the members of the King's Small Council. Her husband's body, the king's body, is getting cold in his room. It's sealed off. She's trying to get the small council together. She's getting the Knights Guards, to get them everything together, and not letting Viserys' daughter, Rhaenyra, who should be the rightful heir, know. She's in Dragonstone. She is in the middle of labor, so she has no idea what's going on. Nobody is letting her know because they are too busy trying to plot to take her throne from her. So all these people are talking, and they have already been swayed pretty much by Queen Alicent and all her scheming the years. And so they're deciding, we need to crown our king. And Lord Beesbury, who is the ancient master of coin, he served King Viserys during his entire reign, and also the grandfather, Jaehaerys, the old king. And he basically says, no, our new queen, Viserys said this is how it's going to be. We need to honor our king's wishes. It doesn't matter what any council says. And nobody is listening. And some of their back and forth debating about what they do, and they're pretty much all deciding that they're going to make Aegon and screw Rhaenyra. But one of the things that's brought up is Lord Beesbury is like, well, in 105 AC, I remember the lords and the knights and people came forward and they swore solemn oaths to defend her rights as being the queen. Rhaenyra rightfully should be the queen, and Sir Tylan ends up pointing out that most of the lords in 105 AC that swore fealty to her are long dead. It's been 24 years, and I've sworn no oath. I was a child at the time, so why should I have to honor those old or dead people's oaths? And then we have Sir Otto Hightower, who's going, oh, you know, her husband is Daemon Targaryen, and he would be the next Maegor the Cruel. And then Queen Alicent chimes in, and she goes, oh, and you know that she hates my children, she wouldn't spare my children, she would kill all of them. Oh, and we all know that her other 3 firstborn children are bastards, and we can't have bastards on the throne. So basically, they're just scheming and trying to convince everyone that this is the right thing to do, and screw Rhaenyra and screw King Viserys and what he decreed. And at the end, Lord Beesbury, the Master of Coin and Lord Treasurer of the Seven Kingdoms, is like, you know, I am a man of honor. I don't forget the vows that were sworn to her or her father. I'm not going to do this. I'm done. And Sir Criston Cole ends up forcing him, Lord Beesbury, back into his seat and opens his throat with a dagger. And there's other rumors that maybe they threw him in a cell and he died of chill, but what's most likely is he just opened up his throat. And after Lord Beesbury was killed, there was no further dissent from anyone. They're like, yep, nope, you're right, Aegon II needs to rule. Screw Rhaenyra, let's get the lords together and fight this. Surely when she sees that we have so many people behind us, she won't be able to do anything and she'll just give up her claim. So the king's been dead for most of the night, his body is cold. Any servants who end up figuring out about the king's passing, they are sent to the dungeons. No bells are rang, which is normal. It's customary when a king dies that you ring the bells and everyone knows. No ravens are flying, letting people know. Sir Criston Cole, the Lord Commander, is going around getting the blacks who are sided with Rhaenyra and letting them know, you know, you can either be with us or you are a traitor and you will die a traitor's death. And then everyone in the council room did a male let's slit our hands open and bind each other with blood, except for Queen Alicent, who was excused for being a woman. And they swore their brotherhood to each other. And so now it's dawn, and they are going about doing their plans, and the first thing that they want to do is get Aegon and get him on board. And I will give it to Aegon, even though he was a very lazy, greedy person when he was approached, and he wasn't with his wife when he was found, he was with his paramour. But when the Queen Alicent, lets him know this is what's going to happen, he actually says, my sister is the heir, not me. What sort of brother steals his sister's birthright? And Sir Criston Cole, who, if you've watched my other videos, especially the prequel to Dance of Dragons, already has just a huge, boiling hatred for Rhaenyra, and he convinces Aegon that the Princess Rhaenyra will execute him, his brothers, his family, because she knows her sons are, bastards, they're strongs, and you guys are true-born Targaryens, and she can't have you taking the throne. And so finally Aegon was like, you're right, I need to do this. At the same time happening, Sir Tylan Lannister now becomes the Master of Coin, instead of Lord Beesbury, whose throat is open, and he ends up seizing the royal treasury, and he divides the gold into 4 parts. One part goes to the Iron Bank of Braavos for safekeeping, another is sent under the Strong Guard to Casterly Rock, a third to Old Town, and then the remaining they're going to end up using for gifts and bribes, and maybe get sellswords if it comes down to that. Sir Tylan Lannister was the Master of Ships, but Sir Otto ended up going to the Iron Islands, thinking about the Iron Islands, dispatching a raven to Dalton Greyjoy, the Red Kraken, and letting him know that he can be a seat on the council for his allegiance, and he can become the Lord of Ship. Another day has passed, no Septons, no Silent Sisters, no one is summoned to the bedchamber of King Viserys. He's laying there, he is swelling, he is rotting, the smell is getting terrible and they're having a hard time masking it. And while this is happening, the ravens are flying, not to Dragonstone, not letting Rhaenyra know, hey, your dad's dead, you know, you can take your crown now, but it's going to Casterly Rock, it's going to River Run, it's going to Highgarden, it's going to Old Town, it's going to lords and knights that Queen Alicent thinks will be sympathetic to her son and end up taking their side and raising an army just in case Rhaenyra tries to take her right as the Queen of Westeros, as Viserys said she should be. The council ends up sitting down again and they go, okay, we need to figure out which lords are going to be for Rhaenyra and which lords are going to be for us. And the ones that we think may be an issue, we need to get there first and let them know you need to be on our side. And one of the biggest problems they think that they're going to have is the Vale, because there's a woman there whose own rights would come into question if Princess Rhaenyra was to be put aside. They know that Rhaenyra will also have the Sea Snake and his fleets, because Daemon is best friends with the Sea Snake, and Rhaenyra is married to Daemon Targaryen. So they have the Valerians on their side. They know that they're most likely going to have Winterfell and the Starks on their side, because the Starks were there for the vows and they uphold it. They will serve their king faithfully. And then they also think that House Baratheon is going to be an issue. And so Queen Alicent lets her son know, her second son, Prince Aemon, that you need to take Vhagar, you need to go to Storm's End, you need to win the hand of one of Lord Baratheon's daughters. Any four will do. Woo her, wed her, get them to be on our side. And Prince Aemon goes, you know, I will not fail. Aegon will have Storm's End, and I will have this girl, and he ends up taking off on Vhagar, which is the oldest and largest of the dragons of Westeros. That dragon is super scary, and other people are afraid to take it on their own dragon. Finally, after letting her husband's body rot for 7 days, even though her father, Sir Otto Hightower, who was also the Hand of the King, wanted to wait longer, after 7 days they decided that finally they should crown Aegon. And Aegon was getting a little impatient too, saying, am I king or no? If I'm a king, then crown me. So they finally sent the ravens, the blackbirds took the air, spreading the word of Aegon's ascension to every far corner of the realm. They end up preparing the corpse finally for burning, and riders are going forth to spread the word of King's Landing, crying, King Viserys is dead, long live King Aegon. And some people are cheering, they're super happy, and other people are crying, they're weeping, and they're going, long live our queen. Sir Criston Cole ends up placing the Iron and Ruby crown of Aegon the Conqueror on the eldest son of King Viserys and Queen Alicent, and he proclaims him Aegon of House Targaryen, second of his name, King of the Andals, and the Rhaenor and the First Men, Lord of the Seven Kingdoms, and Protector of the Realms. And this is actually how Sir Criston Cole becomes known as the Kingmaker. And then Queen Alicent ends up putting on her own crown on the head of her daughter Helena, Aegon's wife and sister, and kissing both her cheeks and kneeling and saying, my queen. And already people are starting to, you know, defect from this and be like, heck no, there should have been 5 Kingsguard, and now at the ceremony there's only 4, so things are starting to happen. After Aegon's coronation, he gets on his dragon, Sunfire, and ends up going around the city flying. And people are cheering, though some people are still crying. The opposite is true on Dragonstone. There is no cheering. There is only screaming as Rhaenyra Targaryen is trying to get through her 3rd day of labor. The child was not supposed to come out for the nether turn of the moon, but the tidings from King's Landing had just driven her into a fury. She starts clawing at her belly, telling the child to get out, get out. People are trying to restrain her from clawing at her baby, trying to get it out. When the baby finally comes out, it's a stillborn girl. It's twisted, it's malformed, there's a hole in her heart, there's a hole in her chest where her heart should have been, and she has a scaled tail. And Rhaenyra ends up saying, she was my only daughter and they killed her. They stole my crown and murdered my daughter, and they shall answer for it. And this is when the dance officially begins, and the princess ends up calling her own council, called the Blank Council. Her uncle and husband, Prince Daemon's there, her 3 sons before him with her first husband are there, but Jace is only 15, Luke is 14, Joffrey is 12, so they're still pretty little. They have 2 Kingsguards with them, 30 knights, 100 crossbowmen, 300 men-at-arms, a dozen lesser lords, so they don't really have a lot of conquering armies to sweep through Westeros right now, but what they do have is dragons. On Aegon's side, they only had 4 dragons of fighting size. On Rhaenyra's side, they have 9 dragons, but luckily for them, they also have wild dragons because in Dragonstone, dragons tend to breed and be bigger. So initially they had 9, but then the Targaryens have this thing of sleeping with a lot of the common folk. And the common folk allow this because the Targaryens are seen as being something better than just normal people. They're almost seen as being gods. So when a Targaryen sleeps with you and you have kids with them, that's considered, an honor. And so Rhaenyra ends up saying, anybody who has the seed, when the seed is considered anyone who is the bastard child of a Targaryen, if you have the seed and you can tame a wild dragon, you can keep that dragon, you'll get monies, titles, fight in this war, we need you. And a lot of people took up that proposition, and a lot of people ended up getting burned, maimed, killed, eaten by dragons, but eventually they ended up being able to tame a few of the wild dragons to a certain extent, and they brought up their fighting numbers from 9 dragons to 14, and now they outnumber Aegon and his dragons by quite a bit. And Rhaenyra basically just wants her throne back. She's going crazy, and Prince Daemon, is agreeing with her and saying, yes, dragons can kill dragons, but let's not get to that point yet. Let's just get people to come to our side. And we need to fight this war with words before we go to battle. And we need to talk to the great houses and try to get them on our side. And they already knew certain people weren't going to be on their side, like Lannisters had already had their allegiance to Aegon the Usurper. Lord Tyrell of Highgarden already, had passed over. The High Towers, of course, weren't going to be on their side. Princess Rhaenys ends up saying, Storm's End will stand with us. We need to go there. And Prince Daemon also thought that the Maid of the Vale might bring the Eyrie to their side as well. And Aegon is... They also know that most likely Aegon is trying to get Pike and get the Iron Islands to stand against them because they have House Valyrian, who has a very powerful force at sea. But as we know from the show, Iron Men can be very fickle, and they were pretty sure that they could get Dalton Greyjoy to come to the princess side. They already knew the Starks were going to come down to fight for them, but unfortunately the Starks have quite a bit to go to get down there, so by the time the Starks get their bodies into the war, it might be too late. So they know that they can't necessarily count on them for reinforcements. And Prince Daemon decides that they need to go to Harrenhal and he's going to take his dragon, Caraxes, while Princess Rhaenyra ends up remaining on Dragonstone. She's recovering her strength. The Valyrian fleet is going to close off the gullet, stopping all shipping from entering or leaving Blackwater Bay. Princess Rhaenys ends up flying overhead to keep the foes from attacking their ships with dragons. Ravens are going to river run the Eyrie, Pike, Storm's End to gain the allegiance. And then finally the Queen's eldest son, Jace, says that dragons are going to win these people over. We need to be the ones. We can't just send ravens. And so he ends up convincing her to send them. There's this whole thing about them being bastards too, so, they're like, okay, our uncle calls us Strongs, and they claim we're bastards, but when the Lords see us on a dragon, they will know that only Targaryens ride dragons, and that their claims are a lie. So she agrees she's going to send Jace, who's 15, Luke, who's 14, on their dragons to go ahead and talk, and she's saying, you don't take any part in fighting, there's no fighting, we're just talking, we're negotiating. Jace, who is the older one, it was decided that he should take the more dangerous flight, which is to the Eyrie to treat with the Lady of the Vale, then to the White Harbor to win over Lord Manderley, and then lastly to Winterfell to meet with Lord Stark, and then Luke's mission would be to go to Storm's End and talk to the Baratheon and, basically say, hey, come to our side. So they're flying off, a hasty coronation happened. Jaehaerys' crown was stolen and brought to Dragonstone, so while she was coordinated with that, Prince Daemon, her husband, ends up placing the old king's crown on his head, proclaiming Rhaenyra, House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Andals, and the prince decides to take the style of Protector of the Realm. And her eldest son, Jace, is considered the Prince of Dragonstone and heir to the Iron Throne. Her first act as queen is she's saying Sir Otto Hightower and his daughter, Queen Alicent, are traitors, they are rebels. My half-brothers, my sister Helene, they have been led astray, if they bend the knee, if they ask for forgiveness, nobody's blood has to be shed. I'm okay with this. I know Council of Evil Men can sway people. Aegon hears about this, and he goes, well, Rhaenyra is guilty of treason. I want her found, I want her arrested, and I want her dead. So Rhaenyra is able to turn the other cheek and say, whatever, I'll forgive you guys if you say it was a mistake. And Aegon II is like, nope, you're dead. Some of the Septons were like, hey, let us talk to her, you know, brothers and sisters, we shouldn't go to war. Let us talk, let us, you know, try to work this out. And Aegon is like, nope, I want more, I want them out of here. Queen Alicent and the now Queen Helena basically finally end up saying, hey, come on, let's talk this out, we don't want bloodshed yet. And he finally agreed. So they end up going over to Rhaenyra. He sends his Septons to go talk to her, and they say, hey, if you just let this go, we'll let you have Dragonstone, the island, the castle will pass to your son Jace upon your death, your second son Luke, he will be recognized as rightful heir to Driftmark, the lands, the holdings of House Valerian. Her boys, by Prince Daemon, Aegon the Younger, and Viserys, will have places of honor at court. One will be a cupbearer, one will be a king's squire, pardons will be granted, everything will be okay. And Rhaenyra ends up looking at the Septon and goes, do you remember my father, King Viserys? And the Maester goes, of course, your grace. And Rhaenyra goes, perhaps you can tell us who he named as his heir and successor. And the Maester goes, you, your grace. And Rhaenyra nods and goes, with your own tongue you admit I am your lawful queen. Why then do you serve my half-brother, the Pretender? Tell my half-brother that I will have my throne, or I will have his head. And this message gets back to Aegon, who is 22 and not a great temperament, lazy, angry person. He is enraged, and he basically is, whatever happens now is on her head, we are going to war. So I'm going to stop right there, and then the second part is going to be all about the bloody battles that happen and the dragons dying and all that. I will either release it later this week or next week, so make sure you come back. I'm excited for the second part of it because this is where things get really super sad, and the dragons are just like, I feel so bad for the dragons, just in the middle of this, just tearing each other apart. And there is a lot of death, a lot of sadness, a lot of bad things happen. So make sure you like, subscribe for more geeky videos every day. Starting January 1st, we're taking a mini break, but we are going to release part 2 later this week or next week.